Welcome to Fearless Females, where ambition meets resilience. Meet your guide, Lorie Jones, president of Fidelis Wealth Advisors. Join her and remarkable women executives as they uncover the triumphs and transformative moments shaping extraordinary careers. Ready to be fearless? Let the journey begin.
Good morning, Fearless Females. I'm excited to have you here again. I wanted to say a big thanks to our sponsor, which is Fearless Financial Advisors. That's actually me, but I'm so excited about the new Fearless brand, and I hope you'll come check us out and just maybe make an appointment, ask a question. I'd love to hear from you. So today we're talking to Gayle Pottle, and this is the part that I loved most about our talk. She said something I thought was really insightful. She said, women compete against themselves even more than they compete against others. She said, fire your inner critic. And I love that idea because we do, don't we? We're harder on ourselves and we're always trying to get better, and not sometimes in a way that is like, oh, I did so much better than I did, last week, or, maybe I failed a little bit less on this than I did the last time I tried it. So that shows a good improvement, but we're always criticizing ourselves. We can always be smarter, faster, kinder. And I think that it's important to be your own cheerleader. Look at your strengths. And she talks about that a lot. Polish your strengths. It's your leverage. Surround yourself with people that make up for maybe some of those areas you're not so great in, and stop letting your inner critic determine how you feel about yourself and making it about her when really your cheerleader should be the one in the front. So let's get started with Gayle. Good morning. So today we're here with Gayle Pottle. She's the president of AdventHealth Rocky Mountain Foundation, where she does some fundraising, where she leads some fundraising teams that do fundraising for hospitals. So I really appreciate you joining us today, Gayle. I'm so excited to get to know you a little bit more and get to hear your story.
Thank you, Lorie. It's such a pleasure to be here, and I applaud you for the work that you're doing to amplify women's voices in this way. So thank you.
I think we could all use just a little bit more encouragement, cheerleading, recognizing that we are doing great things, even by ourselves. We were just chatting recently, or just before this started, and mentioning that a lot of times women don't think they're as great as they really are. And it's nice to have a platform to let you show up and show how amazing you are. So thank you.
Absolutely.
So, Gayle, my very first question is always the same. I'm a reader. I love reading everything and anything. What is your favorite book?
Well, Lorie, I love this question, and I'm so glad that you asked it because I'm an avid reader as well. And I don't know if you've ever taken StrengthsFinder, but one of my strengths is context. And the reason that I love context is that it helps me understand where we've come from so that I can make decisions for where we're going. And so I love historic biographies, and that's really how I sort of self-taught myself about leadership and about women in leadership. So I'm also a big believer in rereads. So currently I'm rereading a book that I've loved for a long time. It is a historic autobiography about Katharine Graham called Personal History, about her journey as the owner and publisher of the Washington Post. I think an all-time favorite is about the magazine The New Yorker, and it's called About Town, written by Ben Yagoda, and it is the history of kind of how The New Yorker came to be, and all sorts of literary and historic context. And I have read that several times. I think if you find a good book, there's no reason you can't reread it. But my best book of the year that I recently finished is a book that I know many of us are reading, which is The Warmth of Other Suns by Isabella Wilkerson, and it's about the Great Migration. And what I found in that story is really a better understanding of women of color who went through that journey. And it really impacts me as a leader to understand that context because, listen, we all can see one another in each other's stories, which is another reason I like biographies. And it just really broadened my perspective. It's so well written. She's a fabulous author, Pulitzer Prize winning.
I'll have to put that on my list. I love the idea of biographies. I've been mostly in nonfiction, self-help, kind of leadership treaties and stuff like that. And it just really never occurred to me, this is shocking, right? But it really never occurred to me that reading the biographies of these great leaders could give you some of those same inspiration.
You know, it's really reassuring when you read biographies of presidents and world leaders and you see their humanity, you see that they survived their mistakes, but we don't hear about failures for leaders like that. We only hear about the wins. And when you read their biography, again, it's really easy to find yourself in their story.
Oh, that's so insightful. Thank you. I love that idea. I'm going to put those on my list. Thanks for sharing. So tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you get started on your journey? What do you do now? Kind of what makes you you?
So I thought I wanted to be a high school English teacher until I actually taught. And I was really bad. It is a really hard job. And I was living in Oklahoma, which is where I'm from. So I quickly pivoted to plan B, which was to sell my car, pack a few boxes, and move to Boston. And I only knew one friend there, but I knew that I needed to regroup. And it was really the beginning of where I saw in my heart that something was not right, but I was just trying to figure it out. So as I grew my network of friends there, it was recommended to me that I might want to pursue marketing. So I took a marketing class at Harvard's extension program and fell in love with it. I knew I had found my tribe. So I moved into a high rise in Back Bay. I had a wonderful job for a great firm, and part of my client territory was in both New York and DC. So I really got to thrive in the Northeast until that began to change and came to an end. So I came back to Oklahoma, but I stayed in marketing and in sales. And I ended up spending 10 years in Fortune 100 tech and in sales and marketing both. And that's really where I learned my business acumen that I apply today in nonprofit work. So after about 10 years, I had started a family by that point, and we had relocated a bit. And I began to become disillusioned with for-profit work. We didn't have ESG programs and DEI programs that we have today, where you find a purpose-centered place for yourself in a corporation. So I transitioned to the world of nonprofit for that. I'd been recruited into that just for my own volunteerism, where I ended up somehow, some way chairing the fundraising gala or committee, and realized that I had a passion for that and a talent. So I made the leap. And I transitioned into nonprofit work, where I've been not quite 20 years in all sorts of roles, from a Kenyan orphanage to where I am today. I'm overseeing about 350 funds for AdventHealth foundations across 5 hospitals, 2 international programs, and a hospice program. So we're a grant-seeking foundation. We go out and raise funds from the community, and then we reinvest those into programs that benefit the community within our facilities. And I believe that healthcare philanthropy is really kind of the best of both worlds, because I get to experience in an institutional setting, which is a good fit for me, the rigor of science, and I get to display my business acumen and exercise that muscle. But I get to lean into that purpose-centered culture that I was looking for. The word philanthropy literally means love for humanity. And I think in healthcare philanthropy, that's what we get to do every day.
Oh, I love that. I love that framing of your job too. It's not just a job to you. You can tell that you've got a passion around it and that you really believe in making the world a better place and not just for yourself, but for others
Mhm.
as well. So it's so funny though that you packed up your car, like you went through school to be an English teacher.
Mhm.
And then
Well, here's what I say though, because one of my passions really is mentoring and leading women. And even in the very talented team that I've hired, I get the pleasure and the joy of developing them. Well, what is team development if it's not teaching? And I do the same with board summits. We have a board summit for our 8 boards coming up, over 100 individuals who I get to teach. And so I'm still teaching, even in working with physicians and with donors, and telling donors what philanthropy is all about, educating them about the impactful programs that they are supporting and how it's changing lives. So I'm still teaching, just in a different setting.
that's so cool. That is really interesting. I always thought that of myself as well. I thought I'm a teacher at heart
Mhm.
because I love that idea of promoting and lifting women, as you say. And I love it when they understand financial concepts that they've been told that, somebody else does that, you don't do that. But
Mhm.
they get that they understand and can use these concepts in their life. And that's such satisfaction. So I said I was a teacher at heart. But it's interesting how you find that in the different careers that you go into and the different places that you end up.
That stays in our hearts, doesn't it? Even if we have an abrupt career change the way that I did early on, I think especially in today's world of hybrid everything, there really are opportunities to continue to nurture that because we bring our whole selves to work, don't we? And we're not unidimensional individuals. So I think the greater opportunities that we as leaders can provide for others to thrive in that kind of setting is very important. And it's part of our legacy as leaders and a way to pay it forward for what women did before us.
Yeah, I love that idea. Like adjusting, if you have someone that is interested in a teaching aspect in their position, if you can find a way for them to do that, or if you have somebody that's interested in the market. I love that you're in marketing. I always say I am not a marketer. I love that there are other people out there that love that.
Well, we all have our skills and need to stay in our lane sometimes, don't we?
Yeah, that's not mine, but I love that there are other people that is because I do things that other people don't love, like finance. Usually you get this look,
Well, I need you in my life. So,
there we go,
mhm.
symbiotic. So, Gail, what's the best investment you've made in yourself? Is there something you can look back on and say, "Oh my gosh, I'm so glad I did that because it's just made all the difference
Mhm.
to who I am."
Well, I say that my move to Boston was my best gift to myself. So that certainly was an investment. But it really is what I'm doing today, which is I'm in grad school at DU, getting a master's in organizational leadership with an emphasis in strategic change and innovation, about which I'm very passionate. But that journey began a few years ago. I'll graduate in June. But as I look back, it really started in 2022. So I was very fortunate to have the opportunity to be a member of Harvard Business School's Women's Leadership Forum in 2022. And it just changed my life. It was beyond what I learned, it was who I learned that with. I was in a class of about 30 individuals from over 20 countries. And it was a 1 week course, but I was with ambassadors and astronauts and authors, women from all sorts of backgrounds and from all over the world. And the commonality that we found is that we have the same struggles, we have the same dreams, we have the same victories, and we have the same failures. And Women often are so competitive with one another. I think it's just kind of the ecosystem that we live in. And the more that we can find those opportunities that galvanize our commonalities, the stronger we are together. So I knew when I came home that it was time for me to go back to grad school. And I was a little bit later in my career, but it's the perfect time because I made a promise to myself, and that is that I would enjoy every single class. And I've been able to do that.
I love that. I love that you're in graduate school. I'm so passionate about learning, and I love that. Okay, I'm gonna give it away, but you're not 20 years old anymore, and
Exactly.
don't you feel like that gives you such a rich legacy to draw on when you're trying to, learn these concepts and help put those back into the world?
And I will tell you, Lorie, you are so right that if you practice that of saying, I want to do this, it's in my heart. And why do I care what other people think? I need to make this my own. And we all have something like that in our lives that is just a seed of a dream that is in our heart. I'm first generation college educated. And, I want to do this while my parents can see it. They did not have the same opportunities that they gave me. My dad was a high school dropout. And it's so gratifying for them to watch this journey as well. But, I had to, especially early on, have a conversation with myself to say, just go for it. It's okay. You're doing this for you. You're not doing it for anyone else.
Yeah, I love that. I went back and got my master's when I was older as well. I had raised my kids mostly and went back to get it, and it was so rewarding, and I love that idea. Just do it. Like, if you've got this dream, it doesn't matter whether you don't look like the traditional college student who spent 4 years and 2 years in grad school.
Mm-hmm.
Like, do
Well
it.
said.
What about, did you ever get some really bad advice? Did anyone ever something, and did you take it? Did you not take it? What'd you learn from it?
So I was seeking a path to promotion, and I asked a gentleman who was a CEO who knew me well and was part of my organization at the time what I should be doing. And he himself had just received a promotion. And I thought maybe he knows something that I just don't know. And his advice to me was really bad advice. He said, Gayle, just keep doing what you're doing. And it was kind of like a pat on the head. And I didn't take the advice, partially because I'm a builder and an innovator, and I can't imagine anything worse than just stagnating. And so I ignored his advice. But I learned from that we have to be careful who we ask for advice from. And I think for women especially, and I've had male mentors, I have a male mentor now, and female mentors, but we have to curate kind of that personal board of directors who know us and really understand what we're looking for and understand how we're wired. Because I learned that was on me. That was the wrong question for the wrong individual. So I didn't follow it.
That's really important advice too, to kind of curate. I've had some guests who are like, it's your gut feeling inside of you. It's what you really believe. You can't let other people. There's a fine line between asking for advice,
yes,
and knowing that advice is good for us in our situation. And that's a really hard line to walk sometimes.
It is a fine line. That's a great way to express that, because asking for advice is it's a mark of strength, I believe. But at the same time, we have to balance that when the answer is also inside of us. It doesn't mean that we stop asking for advice and input, but it is a balance. I'm really glad to hear you say that.
What about, is there a situation in your life that you can look back on and go, oh my goodness gracious, if I knew then what I know now, I would have handled that totally differently?
Mm-hmm. That is a great question. As I think back on my career, I do have a regret when I was in tech. I wish I had stayed a little bit longer in a particular role because I was in one of my all-time favorite jobs and I just didn't realize it at the time. So I had built and was running an innovation center, and we were being relocated through my husband's job at the time. And it was before there was a paradigm that the pandemic gave us about the virtues of remote work. So I really regret that I didn't push harder to say, you know what, I could commute to this. I could adjust my schedule and I could create a new roadmap to really make this work. So I learned what I call the 3 M's from that experience. So one is to build margin into my work week and into my work life. Margin meaning time in my schedule for think time. At that time, I didn't know how to do that. So I just reacted and believed that I needed to leave that job. I stayed with the company, but I took a lesser job just to stay with the company. And I ended up leaving a year later because it was such a mismatch. If I had margin to sit back and contemplate what I wanted and reflect, I believe I would have made a different decision and I would have initiated a better conversation. The second is momentum, paying attention to momentum. What is it that I'm good at? That reflects to me what I love. Generally, when you're building momentum in something, it's because you have a skill, a talent, and that needs to be nurtured and cultivated. Don't give up on it. Keep going. And I gave up on that a little bit too soon. And then last, I call the magic. Don't leave before the magic happens. And in that role, I left a little bit before the magic happened.
So interesting that you say that. I've interviewed many women and they're always regretting that they didn't leave soon enough. And you're probably the first person I've had articulate that well, that you regret that you left too soon.
Some of that's probably personality. I call it decisive, others call it impulsive.
Do you mind going into just a little bit, like how did you and your husband coordinate the fact that when you've got two strong careers and one of you has to relocate, that's really hard. And that's something that a lot of women deal with.
Mm-hmm. You know, there really wasn't a lot of language around the concept of sort of that inner household dialogue and negotiation. And so we really didn't have it. It was just kind of assumed that whoever had the higher salary, you would just follow that. And that was his at the time. And that was kind of the end of it. But again, it was a different time and work culture was a little bit different. And I'm so grateful today that we can think out of the box, and it challenges us to say, then where should we be 10 years from now? Where we look back and say, why did we think that was such a big deal? And say no to letting my team do X, Y, Z because I didn't have a paradigm for it. So it was really the same with that dialogue. There wasn't much discussion about it.
Yeah, it's so interesting. It's really interesting how things have changed, how now there are a lot of options, and corporate America, quite frankly, doesn't want to lose that talent.
Mm-hmm.
When they've got that person in the role that's doing a really great job, but life circumstances mean they need to
Mm-hmm.
move. Like there is a lot of flexibility now around that. And it's a real advantage. It's really great that we have that now, but interesting to be introspective and kind of look back at that and say, if I'd had a little bit more blank space in my schedule to like think creatively, I bet you I could have come up with the solution earlier.
Yes. And I believe men naturally prioritize that, and for women, it's against our grain. We need to be encouraged and give ourselves permission to do it.
Yeah, I definitely need to.
Mm-hmm. It's hard.
Mm-hmm. What if you could go back and talk to your young 20-year-old self, 21, 22, just at the beginning of your journey? Is there any advice you'd give her, anything you'd have to say to her?
The advice I would give to myself is chart your own course. And my father's is 87, and he's been talking to me about that recently, and certainly during my journey to grad school. But I wish I had told myself that at 20 years old, so much younger. And the reason is my mindset at that time was a little bit more of a fixed mindset than a growth mindset. So I was trying to check boxes with a little bit of a people pleaser in me. I was charting other people's courses that I believed were expectations for me rather than charting my own course. So that's what I would just tell my younger self. And so today I try to create my own boxes so that I'm checking my boxes, not expectations that I feel that the world places on me.
I like that idea. I heard it phrased as life by design, like design what you want to have happen
Yes.
and then work towards that. Is there anything you would have done differently if you had that design or charted your own course back at 20 years old?
I think that I would have done so many things sooner. I think I would have gotten into healthcare philanthropy sooner. I think I would have maybe traveled more. I would have given myself some freedoms to not, to let go of some perfectionism so that I could try some different things that I just didn't feel that I had the time or budget for. I would have stepped away to have a little bit more perspective.
I like that idea because I do have some of those same things that compete for my attention and time where I'm like, I could try this, but what if it fails? What if it doesn't work out? And getting past that to really try
Yeah.
those things. I had someone tell me once that it doesn't matter a lot of times that you don't regret the things you did wrong, you regret the things you didn't try.
Mhm.
Was anything scary when you started your career? And does it still scare you or did you work through it?
So, I'm not a person who has a lot of fears today. I'm that person that if you just give me 50% of the information, I'm just going to run off the high dive and I'll figure it out on the way down before I hit the water. But early in my career, I had a fear of failure, certainly, and rejection. And of course, I still have those today. But my fears today are more of boredom and stagnation. I want to make sure that I'm maximizing, all that there is to do and to achieve and to leave as my legacy to my family and my community and those around me. So, my fear was disappointing other people, rejection, failure, and it's crippling to have so much perfectionism in that way. So those are fears that I soon realized it's just part of being human, that I'm not special in my fears. And so the only difference is as you grow through those, you realize that the difference is in here, that I can make a choice to mitigate those a little bit.
So is that how you managed to get over them, or is there a particular tactic you used or anything that helped you? Because you're right, all of us have that. All of us do. Like, what if I'm not good enough? What if I fail at this? Like, how did you get past the what if I'm not good enough? Maybe I won't try to the I'm going to try it. I'll learn something.
I think that's tricky. It's a really good question, Lorie, because I don't think we ever get over it, but we can practice. So it will constantly rear its head. But I do remind myself that the person that I'm talking with has exactly the same fears. My boss is acting out because he has the same fears. It's just part of being human. But for me, with fight or flight, I'm a fighter. And I've gotten some really good coaching about taking 2 steps back when that safety trigger is threatened. And I breathe and I use phrases like, I need to really process that. Listen, I don't need to process it. I'm decisive. I've made up my mind already, but I'm buying myself time. It's that margin so that I'm bringing my heart rate down and I'm not freaking out and wanting to jump across the desk because it's really my fear of rejection, my fear of failure that's causing me to want to fight like that. So I have learned a few tricks and it works.
I like that. I like that idea. I recently gave a presentation at a conference, and that was what my speech coach said. She's like, if you say something, because that was my biggest fear, is I would say something that came out wrong. And she's like, just take a deep breath and say, let me rephrase that and like go on. And just that sense that few minutes to think and kind of step back and take a deep breath and really process. That's great. That's a great tactic.
The observer on the other side of that, what you just described, Lorie, is running on a different time frame as a receiver of that communication. It's a little bit slower. When we're speaking that, our neurons are firing so fast that we feel that 5 seconds of silence is so long, and it's really not. That's why I'm saying it takes practice, and you read the other person's face and you realize they think it's very fair that you need to take a breath, and it's very natural.
I love that. What about any unique challenges? Did you face any unique challenges because you were a woman in your journey along?
Absolutely. The biggest ongoing challenge, and it really can get me down personally, is continued pay inequity. In healthcare philanthropy in particular, just this week, our annual salary survey came out, and women continue to be paid 33% less than women. And in healthcare than men. And in healthcare philanthropy, the sad thing about that is that women comprise 80% of our workforce. And in more senior roles, it can sometimes be even more pronounced. So it's really hard to not get discouraged by that. And I think foundations like the Women's Foundation of Colorado, and I think our governor has done a really good job with some of this as well, of providing some support to really encourage transparency. And I think that that's helped women, but we still have a long way to go.
Yeah, we certainly do. And I'm really hoping that this next generation is going to champion that particular cause and get us through that pay inequity, because it is a hard thing. When I give direction to my young people that I'm mentoring, I'm like, number one, make sure you ask for what you want. Make sure you show up to your reviews with what you have done and what you would like to see as far as compensation goes. Make sure that you're comparing apples to apples all the time and asking for it. But is there things that you can see that women can go to those that might stop that pay inequity?
That's exactly what I am coached with as well. One of the things that I learned at Harvard is the layered aspect, so that this pay inequity accumulates over time. And it just hadn't occurred to me in quite this way. But truthfully, the best fix for that is to leave your job and get a raise in the next job, because those advancements are how women can quickly make up for that pay gap. And it's just a little bit harder when you stay with an organization. And so that's sometimes counterintuitive advice, but that really is the fastest way to close that gap that for women has become cumulative, because it starts early on. And then when we take time out from the workforce to have kids, which I did, and then we come back in 7 years later, it is, you've already set the ball in motion and you're working from behind, and you can't just finish your career and catch up with that. But we're doing other things like getting on paid boards and working side gigs. And I applaud women who, if they're in that period of their lives, they're able to manage that, because that's a way that women are closing that gap as well.
Yeah, I think that also another idea is making the workplace friendlier to women as they have kids, so that they don't have to take big breaks in the middle of their career and take.
Agreed.
So that's what we work at here. And it's a passionate subject for me, because I'm doing the financial advising for these women who are 33% less than where they could be. And it affects their retirement too. So it doesn't just stop affecting when they reach the end of their working life, but affects all the way through their whole life. So I'm a big advocate. We definitely need to fix that problem for sure.
Yes.
Gayle, what is the thing that you are most proud of?
I am most passionate about developing women and really helping women to silence that inner self-critic, because I believe that women naturally compete against one another, but we compete against ourselves even more so. And so being in healthcare philanthropy helps with that. A lot of this, surrounds behavioral health challenges as well. And we can uplift one another in doing that, but we are not there's no program that's out there that can help us in the way that we can help ourselves by giving ourselves permission to fire the inner critic. And to also realize it's not a weakness to ask for help. And I get calls all the time, Gayle, can I meet with you? Can we meet for coffee? And I just don't always have time to respond to those. If someone says, Gayle, I would love to meet and run something by you and get your advice, I will meet with that person. So there's a saying in philanthropy, if you want a gift, ask for advice. And if you want advice, ask for a gift. And it's a truism that holds true in life. So don't be afraid to ask for help and for advice. It is not a sign of weakness. It's truly a sign of strength.
I agree 100%. I had my daughter recently went to Costa Rica and she's teaching English kids in Costa Rica. And she was just having a really hard time with being away from home. You know, they get sick that first couple weeks and she's in a whole other land. And so she was calling me and she was really upset. And I'm like, Samantha, I said, there are 10, 11 other girls there. Go tell them you're sad. I bet you one of them wants to give you a hug and help you through this because they're probably sad too. So I think that's what you're saying. Like, reach out, say, hey, I'm having a rough time, or I could use some help, or could you just tell me I'm doing good things today, please?
Well, there's a special relationship between women. And I love working with male colleagues and male leaders, but there's just really a special bond with women. And I do think that it gets easier as we get a little bit older because we're more self-confident. You just had more practice and you learn to let go of things that you used to believe mattered and that maybe matter a little bit less. So you just have a little bit more freedom. But, getting back to StrengthsFinder, and maybe this would be, just kind of a final encouragement to your podcast viewers, that one of the reasons I love StrengthsFinder is that once we learn about ourselves, what our strengths are, we can kind of let go of our weaknesses because it's the premise of the program that says, listen, you can try to fix your flaws your entire life and you will work yourself into the grave doing that. You are, perfection is unachievable and you need to instead surround yourself with individuals who can plug the gap for your weaknesses. So focus on your strengths. You're going to maximize yourself if you polish your strengths because that's your leverage. Then your weaknesses, surround yourself with other people. And that takes some humility to say, you know what, Lorie, I need you as a financial expert to step into this. I'll do your marketing plan. And we complement each other and we can optimize our impact and just maximize our work because we are focused on those things that we're already good at. It's a more efficient way to work and live. It is a healthier way to interact because we also view other women through their strengths and we allow them their platform for that. And we don't need to be threatened by that because we're confident in our own strengths.
Oh, I love that. There, I'm gonna tell them that's the quote I want on your podcast. We don't need to be threatened by them because we are confident in our own strengths.
Yes.
Love that. Gayle, is there any advice that you would give a young lady who's just starting down this path that you're so successful at to help them get where you're at today?
Mm-hmm. Well, I believe that every young woman starting in her career should start with some sort of assessment because what you'll discover is that we all have blind spots at any age, at any stage of career, and that feedback is your friend. And doing that through an assessment and even if it's you and you're not working with a coach, but whether it's Myers-Briggs or it's DISC or a StrengthsFinder that I've mentioned, get really comfortable with that and read and gain insights as much as possible. Then the next piece of advice, and I did do this early on with the group of women friends early in my career, is build what I call a personal board of directors. And these are advisors who are a little further along in your career, and they're women whose advice and input and opinion you value, and it's what you can't get for yourself reading it in a book or from ChatGPT or, look or on Instagram, and they will know something that you don't know that can give you advice. Like it's just like having this podcast in your hip pocket all the time. So personal board of advisors would be next, and they can be based all over the country. Maybe it's 4 or 5 women. Once a quarter, you get together and you have questions where you are wanting them to give input on a particular issue that you have. It's free, and it's just a great practice to start early in your career. And the last benefit of that is that they're objective. They don't have the same biases and the same political pushback that you may be experiencing in your company or your organization. And so they're going to be able to see that a little bit more objectively. And then the third one that I would give is to find your voice. Find your voice early. Know what you believe. Know what you're passionate about. Cultivate your voice to know what your place in the world is, because your gifts are needed by our planet. And the earlier that you can do that, you're going to be just fine in your career.
I love that. That's one thing that I've worked really hard on probably the last 2 or 3 years, is finding my voice, because a lot of times if you're not with your tribe, your voice can be too pushy or something along those lines. But if you find that place that you really fit, then your voice is heard. I love that idea. Those are some great bits of advice. Thank you so much, Gayle, for spending the time with us today and really sharing your wisdom. I appreciate it. If I have listeners that want to get in touch with you and ask other questions, how do they do that?
They can reach out to me on LinkedIn. That's probably the best way to find me, Gayle Pottle, GaylePottle.
Perfect. That's great. Thank you again so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Lorie, thank you. I appreciate your leadership. You're making a big impact.